Huitzilopochtli. The Greeks chose Athena, the goddess of the planet Venus, as their patron, but the people of Troy looked to Ares Mars as their protector. A similar situation existed in ancient Mexico. Quetzalcoatl, known as the planet Venus, was the patron of the Toltecs, but the Aztecs, who later came to Mexico and supplanted the Toltecs, revered Huitzilopochtli as their protector god. Sahagan says that Huitzilopochtli was a great destroyer of towns and killer of people. The epithet, blood-stained stormer of walls, is familiar to us from the Iliad, where it is regularly applied to Mars. In warfare, he, Huitzilopochtli, was like live fire, greatly feared by his enemies, writes Sahagan. In his large work on the Indians of America, H. Bancroft writes, Huitzilopochtli had, like Mars and Odin, the spear or a bow in his right hand, and in the left, sometimes a bundle of arrows, sometimes a round white shield. On these weapons depended the welfare of the state, just as was on the ensign of the Roman Mars, which had fallen from the sky, or on the palladium of the warlike Pallas Athena. By names also points out Huitzilopochtli as war god, so he is called the terrible god Quetzalcoatl, or the raging Quetzalcoatl. Bancroft proceeds, one might be led to compare the capital of the Aztecs with ancient Rome on account of its warlike spirit, and therefore it was right to make the national god of Aztecs a war god, like the Roman Mars. But Huitzilopochtli was not like Mars. He was Mars.
The identity of their appearance, character, and action is dictated by the fact that Mars and Huitzilopochtli were one and the same planet god. The conflict between Venus and Mars was also symbolized in religious ceremonies of the ancient Mexicans. In one of these ceremonies, the priest of Quetzalcoatl shot an arrow into an effigy of Huitzilopochtli, which penetrated the god, who was then considered dead. This appears to have been a symbolic repetition of the electrical discharge that Venus ejected towards Mars. There it is. But the Aztecs would not concede the death of Mars, the bellicose destroyer of towns, the god of sword and pestilence, and carried on their wars against the Toltecs. The people who looked to the planet Venus, these wars between the Toltecs and the Aztecs, must have taken place earlier than is generally supposed. They might have occurred before the present era, when there was rivalry between the peoples devoted to Venus and those devoted to Mars, and when the memory of the cosmic conflict was still vivid. Tao. What is it that we call the Tao? There is the Tao, or way of heaven, and there is the Tao, or way of man. Guangxi. The planets of the solar system were disturbed by the contacts of Venus, Mars, and the Earth. We have already referred to the annals of the bamboo books, where it is written that in the 10th year of the Emperor Kui, the 18th monarch since Yahoo, the 5 planets went out of their courses. In the night, stars fell like rain. The earth shook. The disturbances in the family of planets were caused by collisions between Venus and Mars. The battles of 2 stars, appearing as bright as suns, and mentioned in another Chinese chronicle as having occurred in the days of the same Emperor Kui Ki. At this time, the 2 suns were seen to battle in the sky. The 5 planets were agitated by unusual movements. Mount Tashin fell down. The 2 battling stars are recognized by us as Venus and Mars. In the language of the Eratosthenes, the Alexandrian librarian of the 3rd century before this era, in the 3rd place is the star Stella of Mars. It was pursued by the star Sidus, Venus. Then Venus took hold of him and inflamed him with an ardent passion. In an astronomical chart dating from the Middle Ages, 1193, used in education of emperors and known as the Su-Chao astronomical chart, it is asserted on the authority of the ancients that it happened that planets went off their courses. It is said that once Venus ran far off the zodiac and attacked the Wolf Star. A change in the course of the planets is regarded as a sign of heavenly wrath, since it occurred when the emperor or his ministers sinned. In the old Chinese cosmology, Earth is represented as a body suspended in air, moving eastward, and thus was understood as one of the planets. The following passage from the Taoist text of Wen Tzi contains a description of calamities which, as we have found, belong together. When the sky, hostile to living beings, wishes to destroy them, it burns them. The sun and the moon lose their form and are eclipsed. The 5 planets leave their paths. The 4 seasons encroach one upon another. Daylight is obscured. Glowing mountains collapse. Rivers are dried up. It thunders. Then in the winter, hoarfrost falls in the summer. The atmosphere is thick, and human beings are choked. The state perishes. The aspect and the order of the sky are altered. The customs of the age are disturbed, thrown into disorder. All living beings harass one another. Honan Tis, a Taoist author of the 3rd century of this era, speaks of the sun and the earth leaving their paths. He transmits the tradition that if the 5 planets err on their routes, the state and the provinces are overcome by flood. Taoism is the dominant religion of China. The term Tao originally meant the revolution of the way of the heavens about the earth. This movement of the heavens was regarded as the cause of the phenomenon on earth. Then Tao was located about the celestial pole, which was considered to be at the seat of power. Because all revolves about it in the course of time, Tao was viewed as the universal cosmic energy behind the visible order of nature. Yuda. In an old textbook on Hindu astronomy, Surya Siddhanta, there is a chapter of planetary conjunctions. Modern astronomy knows only one kind of conjunction between planets. When one planet, or sun, stands between Earth and another planet, differentiated only as superior and inferior conjunction in opposition. But ancient Hindu astronomy distinguished between many different conjunctions, translated as follows: Samyoga conjunction, Samaga coming together, Yoga junction, Malaka uniting, Yudi union, Yuda encounter in the meaning of conflict, fight. The first paragraph of this chapter of planetary conjunctions, the Surya Siddhanta, tells us that between planets there occur encounters in battle, Yuda, and simple conjunction, Samyoga, Samagama. The force of the planets, which manifests itself in conjunction, is called Bala. A planet can be vanquished, Jita. A Pavsya encounter, struck down, Vendhavasta. Utterly vanquished, Vijita. A powerful planet is called Balin. And the victor planet in an encounter, Jn. Venus is generally victor. To the last sentence, the translator of the Surya Siddhanta wrote, in this passage, we quit the proper domain of astronomy and trench upon that of astrology. Aside from the introductory lines in which the work is presented as a revelation of the sun, a common introduction in many astronomical works of the Hindus, it is written in very sober terms. It makes use of the square roots and geometrical figures and speaks in algebraic terms Every sentence of the work is in scientific language, very precious indeed. This manual of the Surya contains also the correct notion of the earth as a sphere or globe in the ether, showing that the Hindus of early times knew that the earth is one of the planets, though they thought it to be situated in the center of the universe. Aryabhata held the opinion that the earth revolves on its axis, like the author of the Book of Job, who wrote that the earth hangs upon nothing. 26:7. The Surya knew that above and beneath are only relative, and everywhere upon the globe of the earth men think their own place to be uppermost. But since it is a globe in the ether, where should there be an upper or where an underside of it? The strange chapter of Surya Siddhanta, dealing with the conjunctions of planets and with their conflicts when in close proximity, made modern scholars think that this portion did not have the scientific value of the rest of the work, and was a product of astrological invention, or even an interpolation. We know now that this chapter has equal scientific value with other chapters of the work, and that encounters between planets actually took place a number of times in the solar system. In Hindu astronomy, a junction of the planets is called yoga, or yuga. Very revealing is the fact that the world ages are also called yogas. Planetary conjunctions, or more precisely, junctions. Bandahus. Theomashi, the battle of the gods, described in the Homeric works in the Edda and Huitzilopochtli epos, is related in the Indian-Iranian text of the Bahadis. The planets ran against the sky and created confusion in the entire cosmos. In the long battle of the celestial bodies, one of them made the world entirely dark, disfigured creation, and filled it with vermin. This act of the cosmic drama was recognized by us as the first contact of the Earth with the comet Typhon, the same as Pallas Athene. Other acts of the drama followed. The planetary disturbances lasted for a long time. The celestial sphere was in revolution. The planets, with many demons, dashed against the celestial sphere and mixed the constellations, and the whole creation was as disfigured as thought fire disfigured every place and smoke arose over it. The planet named Gakahar, or wolf progeny, and special disturber of the moon, and a celestial body called Mivishmuspar, provided with tails or a comet, brought confusion to the sun, moon, and stars. But in the end, the sun was attached to Muspar, to its own radiance by mutual agreement, so that he may be less able to do harm. In this description of the battle of the planets, we recognize the wolf progeny and disturber of the moon, the planet Gokahar, as Mars. Muspar, with tails, apparently is Venus, called also Tistria, or the leader of the stars against the planets. As the final result of these battles, the sun made Venus into an evening-morning star, or put Lucifer lower down so that it could do no harm. In the Bahidas, the conflicting forces are called not gods, but merely planets. Lucifer cut down. It can be said that the planet Mars saved the terrestrial globe from a major catastrophe by colliding with Venus. Since the days of the Exodus and Joshua, Venus was dreaded by the peoples of the earth. For about 700 years, this terror hung over mankind like the sword of Damocles. Human sacrifices were made to Venus in both hemispheres in order to propitiate her. After centuries of terror, one sword of Damocles was removed from above the heads of mankind, only to be replaced by another. Mars became the dread of the peoples, and its return was feared every 15 years. Before this, Mars had absorbed the blow, even the repeated blows of Venus, and had saved the Earth. Venus, which collided with the Earth in the 15th century before the present era, collided with Mars in the 8th century. At that time, Venus was moving at a lower elliptical velocity than when it first encountered the Earth. But Mars, being only about 1/8 the mass of Venus, was no match for her. It was therefore a notable achievement that Mars, though thrown out of the ring, nevertheless was instrumental in bringing Venus from an elliptical to a nearly circular orbit. Looked at from Earth, Venus was removed from a path that ran high to the zenith and over the zenith to its present path, in which it never retreats from the sun more than 48 degrees, thus becoming a morning or an evening star that precedes the rising sun or follows the setting sun. The awe of the world for many centuries, Venus became a tame planet. Isaiah, referring figuratively to the king of Babylon who destroyed cities and made the land into a wilderness, uttered his remarkable words about Lucifer that fell from heaven and was cut down to the ground. The commentators recognize that behind these words, applied to the king of Babylon, must have been some legend about the morning star. The metaphor regarding the king of Babylon implied that his fate and the fate of the morning star were not dissimilar. Both of them fell from on high. But what could it mean that the morning star fell from the heights, asked the commentators. Significant are the words of Isaiah about the morning star, that it weakened the nations. Before it was cut down to the ground, it weakened the nations in 2 collisions with the earth, and it weakened the nations by keeping them in constant fear for centuries. The book of Isaiah, in every chapter, provides abundant evidence that with the removal of Venus, so that it no longer crossed the orbit of the earth, danger was not eliminated, but became even more threatening.
I would like to take this time to give some very special recognition to some very special folks who, without your kindness for the month of January and February, I couldn't have done it. You guys make me go. I'm so grateful to you. Gene Metz, Jesse Lang, Cecily Wells, Bass Smelter, Meredith Whittle, Green Zone Institute, Andrew Parkinson. Thank you, folks. You are the best. And last but never least, the Grade 8, my patrons. Welcome new user, Keith J. Welcome, Keith. Thank you for joining. You are the first new patron I've had in months. So, you're a sight for sore eyes. Chris Kelly, thank you very much, Chris. Tony Ware, Janice Phillips, Ross E. Carolyn, thank you so much, Ross. Tyler Stanley, Top Knot, and Oppenheimer Ranch Project. You put the extra bounce in my step and make life just a little bit easier. For that, I deeply thank you.